When your days feel overwhelming and life has you anxious and stressed, you can find peace and hope in Jesus. Whether you're new to prayer or looking to deepen your relationship with God, Jesus Listens empowers you every day with quick but impactful devotional prayers. By praying scripture through this daily devotional prayer book, you'll experience true rest for your anxious mind, healing for your soul, and precious time in the presence of your Father. Jesus Listens is available now in a beautiful large text charcoal leather soft edition. Pick up your copy today and start your journey to peace. Look for Jesus Listens large text leather soft edition everywhere books are sold.
We're made in God's image. God is a creator. And so that's why I love the term content creator, because we're actually using our gifts, our abilities, and our talents to create something through technology for people to enjoy and be inspired by.
Welcome to the Jesus Calling Podcast. This week on the podcast, we meet Justin Knoop, a husband, father of 4, and the heart behind the Blessing Boys. What began as a small lawn care business grew into a mission to serve others, inspire his sons, and transform lives 1 yard at a time. Later in the episode, we'll hear from Tricia Goyer, an author, speaker, podcaster, and homeschooling mom whose journey has taken her from teen pregnancy to building a family of 10 through adoption and foster care. Along the way, Tricia discovered it's not about doing more, but about noticing what matters most. Let's begin with Justin's story.
My name is Justin Knoop. I'm the dad behind the Blessing Boys. I'm a father of 4 sons. I've been married for 16 years, and currently my sons and I go out and we serve the community by transforming overgrown yards for people in need, the elderly, single moms, just people that need help. And so we have built a YouTube channel out of that and a social media following. And so now I get to just serve people full time in that capacity. I grew up actually in Buffalo, New York, and lived there until about the age of 14 or 15 when my entire family relocated to North Carolina. My biological father, he was actually out of my life from before I was born. And then my mother was in a relationship with another man who was my stepfather, who actually raised me. There was a search in my heart for purpose, for fulfillment, in a lot of ways, something to fill that hole of my own father not being there for me. And so I spent a lot of my years, my teenage years, and even onto my 20s, just searching to fill that void. I think eventually it did lead me to where I am today, but it took me a long time to figure out what that purpose was that I was searching for. My first career, I was an x-ray technologist. I worked at the hospital. And 11 years in is when I actually met Jesus. My wife is really such an inspiration for my walk with the Lord. The Jesus Calling devotional she received very early on in her walk, and it was pivotal for her because it got her into the habit of spending time with the Lord and gave her direction on what that looked like and where to go in the scriptures. And then I was able to be inspired early on by her consistency in her time with the Lord to finally come around to learning how my own personal walk with the Lord could be impacted by that. And I felt like, okay, now my life has purpose. Like, what does God actually want me to do with this? Because before I chose my career path based on what was logical, what would make money? How would I be able to take care of my family and things like that? But now that God was leading my wife and my family, we felt called to the mission field. We're planting house churches, sharing the gospel with people. And we found that we were teaching people the same thing over and over. And so I was like, hey, what if I learn how to use YouTube and social media to begin to record these gospel presentations and teachings? The very first time that I created a video of sharing the gospel and I got a message from somebody in Indonesia that was responding to it while I was asleep, that blew my mind. I recorded a video once, and then it's continuing to share the message of Jesus with people over and over, even while I sleep. We traveled all over the world, trained with different missions organizations, and ended up landing in Nepal. And right before COVID hit, we moved back to the States. And when we got back, I had this choice. I could either go back to my old career or I could do something new. And as my wife and I were praying, we both heard separately that I was supposed to start my own business. And so the only thing that kept popping in my head was lawn care. So I started my lawn care business in 2019, started very small. And I had just a few yards, family members, friends, stuff like that. Built that up over time. One night I was sitting in bed with my wife and I came across a video on YouTube where somebody was mowing for people, and I was just so inspired the impact that this was having on people. And at the same time, I was thinking about my sons. They're getting into this phase of life where I need to start thinking about what it means to begin to set an example for them. So what I did was I set aside Fridays, one day a week, for me and my sons to actually go out and serve the community in this way. And having a little bit of a history of social media and YouTube from the past, I knew that the greatest impact we could have was not only by serving these people, but by actually documenting the process so we can inspire people. I think we can get caught up in our own lives and what's going on in our family and our home and forget that there's a world out there that needs you. And so what we teach our kids is that, your purpose in life outside of being in relationship with God is to bring value to others. We've got the tools that we have, and we go out, we see a problem, we fix that problem to the best of our abilities, and then we don't expect anything in return. We live in a world now where when you say, I want to do something for free, there's always a catch. And so it takes a minute for people to actually trust you enough to say, why are you doing this? But now if the person that I knock on their door says no, then we have to move on. But what happens when you say yes? It's amazing the restoration that can take place. I didn't know how quickly it would grow, but after we posted our first video on YouTube, it grew pretty rapidly. Eventually, I actually shut down my lawn care business so that we could do this full time and really just put our full efforts into what we're doing with Blessing Boys. I have seen major changes in my boys since we've started doing what we're doing. And so getting to see that hundreds of times over and over has really changed them. So I pay a lot of close attention, not only to how they're working in the yard, but my favorite thing to do is watch when the customer or the person reacts to what we've just done and to see how they react to their response and their reaction. And I think when kids can begin to see that, it motivates them so much more to want to do something above and beyond just hanging out, playing video games, doing whatever. Yes, we have different hobbies and things that we do, but we want to pour the majority of our time into things that impact people around us. We're not just about cutting grass in overgrown yards. We're really after changing lives and impacting people. In a lot of ways, we look at the yards that we do and we can see a story of our own lives in these yards. They sit for so many years sometimes, and people walk past them every single day, almost to where they don't even notice them anymore because they're just used to them being overgrown and chaotic. It's like a picture of our heart. But then one day, just like in my own life, Jesus took notice of my heart and he stopped and he knocked on the door of my heart and he offered to completely restore.
To learn more about Justin Knoop, visit theblessingboys.com and follow them on their YouTube channel. Stay tuned to Tricia Goyer's story after a brief message.
Hey everyone, this is Faith Broussard-Cade, your host for the 4th season of Jesus Calling, Stories of Faith on Up TV. We're so excited to bring you inspiring stories of people from all walks of life who have turned to their faith in times of struggle and in times of joy. We're going to hear from some extraordinary guests this season, including Julie Chen Moonves, who you might know as the host of Big Brother. We'll also be joined by NFL Hall of Famer Terry Bradshaw and light heavyweight champion boxer Andre Ward. Grammy Award-winning gospel singer B.B. Winans, the world-renowned Italian tenor Andrea Bocelli, and actress Taraji P. Henson, in addition to many others. And of course, you'll get to hear more about me and my story too. I can't wait to see you there. Tune into these inspiring stories on Up TV.
Our next guest is Tricia Goyer, an author, speaker, podcaster, and homeschooling mom. From navigating teen pregnancy to building a household of 10 through adoption and foster care, Tricia shares how embracing imperfection and tuning into what truly matters has shaped her family and her faith.
My name is Tricia Goyer, and I live in Arkansas. I've been married to John for 35 years, and we have 10 kids. They range from the ages of 35 all the way down to 14. And I'm a writer, a speaker, a homeschooling mom. I thought I just wanted to write one book and homeschool my kids. And I have over 100 books published, do 4 different podcasts, speak at conferences, and try to hang out with my family as much as possible. We never planned on having 10 kids. I grew up going to church, but it was all new, we hadn't fully integrated Christianity into our home, and then became pregnant as a teen. My boyfriend was out of the picture that I got pregnant by. And then I started praying for my future husband. And so God brought me John. He was actually the pastor's son. And then John and I got married and had 2 more kids. By the time I had 3, I'm like, okay, I think I'm done. And then years later, God called us to adoption. So we actually adopted a newborn when our youngest was 15. And then God opened up the door to foster care, and we adopted a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old from foster care. And then I thought for sure we were done. And then a couple of years later, God put it on our hearts, older kids and sibling groups. And so we adopted a sibling group of 4 girls. And so it became this very loud, very chaotic, kids from trauma, all different ages that I was going to homeschool. Like, now, children, we are going to sit around the kitchen table and read the Bible and memorize scripture verse and read missionary stories and read devotional books and talk about Jesus. So it was a lot. So we were signed up for every activity. We're doing sports and arts and homeschool co-ops and music and all the Bible studies. And I was completely overwhelmed. And it was actually my husband that sat me down and like, do they want to do all these things? Like, we have kids that didn't even like sports. And so it really made me realize, I thought kids were empty vessels and we just need to like pour everything in them. Okay, so here's a dash of sports and a dash of music, and we're going to stir in some art classes, and that they needed all those things because the opportunities are out there, but we were just way overdoing it. And I realized through God, through prayer, through sitting before Him, crying because I was so overwhelmed, that He already created them as unique human beings with a purpose. And I didn't need to pour everything into them. I just needed to like follow the purpose that God had given them. And so my second oldest played the piano, and her teacher's like, she picks it up twice as fast. Like, just keep running with that. So that's what we did. We dropped dance. We dropped some of the other things. She was also very outgoing. So she got involved in youth group and in leading youth worship. She's a missionary now in the Czech Republic. My oldest son played basketball. My third oldest loved to write. And so really just discovering their unique talents. And so by the time we adopted kids, I figured that out a little bit. And there is so much trauma. They had been in foster care for 6 years. They'd had a failed adoption. And so it was very hard for them to accept me. There'd been so much chaos in their lives. One of my daughters, her name's Florentina, and she was 11 when we adopted her. And I would have her, like, it's your turn to do the kitchen chore. And she would just be flat out on the floor, just crying, just dramatic about everything. But what I noticed, while that was the negative side of it, the positive side was anytime we volunteered together at Vacation and Bible School, or when I mentored teen moms, she would come babysit. Like, kids were just drawn to her. And I'm like, Florentina, it's like you're Miss Frizzle. I can just see you're so good with kids. They relate to you. They love being around you. You're such a great leader. And so the more that I praised her at the things I saw, the drama was redirected in a good way. And so later, she was working as a physical therapy assistant, and an opportunity came up for her teaching preschool and helping support missionaries in Poland. And so she and her sister, they both applied, and out of 11 people, they both got chosen, and they're in Poland now. So I think it really takes almost becoming students of our kids and seeing what God already put in them, the calling that has on their lives, and us not trying to do everything and fill our days with just shuttling them from here or there, but really focusing on who God created each individual to be, the special design for them, and then, going before God, sitting quiet before Him, praying for our kids and asking Him to open the door that we can help them walk through. And that really just takes the pressure off us because God has already got it figured out. We just have to join Him in the journey. My husband led children's church for 25 years, and we would have our kids dressing up in Bible costumes and acting out Bible stories and helping with the soundboard. So they were very involved. And then I helped start a crisis pregnancy center in Montana that I ran for years. And I felt so guilty, like I'm the worst mom ever because my kids are having to come and help fold baby clothes. And we would babysit for the teen moms. But those acts of service ended up being the things where they just continued to serve when they grew older in some capacity or another. They saw other people, they saw their needs. And so I always say, let's always be on the lookout for who needs help. And I remember one day we were sitting around the table during our homeschool, and one of our girls mentioned that when she was on a walk with some of the siblings the day before, that they saw a lady from our church 3 blocks over. She just moved in and she was a single mom. And she says, Mom, we should go see, since she lives so close, her son was 10 at the time, if she needs help sometimes, he could come here to play. And so we did that. And it was my 13-year-old daughter that pointed that out and said, hey, there's a need. And so they're still really good friends of ours. And so when we have them seeing how they can serve and help other people, then the concern isn't like, do I have the newest phone or do I have whatever? But we're looking to see how we can help and serve other people. And I think that really shows that my 2 daughters are working in service industries, caring for people. And then we have 2 daughters serving overseas as missionaries. So it just helps them to get a different outlook on life when we are seeing these acts of kindness. It's like big worldview thinking when it comes to our kids. We have great opportunity to influence our kids for their faith journey. They're kind of still in that little kid part where they still want to play Mario Kart, they want to play Legos, they still enjoy those things, but they're starting to understand their place in the world and have big questions of how do we know the Bible's true? And so the 5 real life ways are prayer, Bible reading, conversation, service, and relationships. And it just comes down to, if anything else, you can quit every sport. They could fail at math. But if you take time for conversation and getting to really know them, to build those relationships where you're enjoying board games and family times. Tonight, our family, we're having little snacks for dinner and we are doing a board game night. We've got some tents. They want to sleep in the yard. So I'm like, okay, we'll see how this goes. But we want to have these times with them where we're connecting with them, when we're listening to them. And if it takes listening to them talk about their Mario Kart score for 45 minutes before they finally get around to feeling like they were bullied or the situation with the neighbor down the street, kids won't come just naturally up to us and share the deep things of our heart. If we're just busy, if we're on our phone, if we're distracted. But if we're listening, if we're sitting around, driving around, getting a smoothie, taking a walk around the block, if we're there and listening to them, that's when the big things come out. That's when the questions happen. Even reading a chapter of the Bible, that's where they're like, oh, you're right. We always talk about David being very emotional because one minute he's like, I am but a worm, not a man. And the next moment he's like, I'm in a miry pit. And the next moment he's like, I'm praising God. And we're like, see, it's okay to be emotional. David was emotional. You can be emotional and you can still praise God. If we're waiting for our kids to be adults before we have meaningful conversations with them, it is too late. We need to build that. And preteens is the perfect little window where they still think it's really cool to go get a smoothie and to talk. And we can use that time to pour into our kids. So many times we wonder how things are going to work out. Whatever God has called us to, we're trying to see the end. All we see is obstacle, 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 obstacle. And I think just a reminder that if God calls us to something, He is faithful and He's going to be there. And when I just need a little bit of encouragement, I love Jesus Calling. I listened to the audiobook we try to bring So Strong for our family, for all of our kids, and just turning on the audio for 5 minutes when I'm folding laundry, 5 minutes in the car, doing dishes, listening to that short little excerpt is just like, I need that little reminder throughout the day for whatever comes up. I'm like, oh yeah, the battle's the Lord. He's got this. And so I think it's so helpful. And with our kids, praying for them, He knows how much we love and care for our kids, and He loves and cares for them even more than us. So that's what keeps me going. Jesus Listens, October 21st. My faithful God, I look to You this day for help, comfort, and companionship. I know You are always by my side, so even a glance can connect me with You. When I look to You for help, it flows freely from Your presence. You are teaching me to recognize my constant need for You, in small matters as well as large ones. Your continual companionship is an amazing gift. As I look to You, I find You faithful, true, and lovingly present with me. No matter what losses I may experience in my life, I know that nothing can separate me from Your loving presence. In Your comforting name, Jesus. Amen.
To learn more about Tricia Goyer, visit triciagoyer.com and be sure to check out her new book, Faith That Sticks: 5 Real-Life Ways to Disciple Your Preteen, at your favorite retailer. If you'd like to hear more stories about serving others, check out our interview with Gary Sinise. Next time on the Jesus Calling podcast, we'll hear from Monique Rodriguez, the founder and the CEO of Miel Organics beauty brand. Monique shares how loss led to drastic change in her career and a shift from registered nurse to CEO, and how she's breaking barriers for Black women in business.
I really wanted to pursue my dreams of passion, but I didn't believe in myself. I didn't have the courage to step out on faith, to turn off all of the noise. And it wasn't until I went through something very devastating in my life that I decided to, number one, give my life to Christ. And I decided that I wanted to follow His lead, and I wanted to live a purpose-filled life, because you only get one shot at life.
Thanks for listening to the Jesus Calling Stories of Faith podcast on the Life Audio Network. Every week, we'll bring you stories from people who share their journeys of faith and how prayer and a relationship with God transformed their lives. Be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And leave us a review so others can be inspired weekly by these stories of faith. Finally, you can find encouragement, resources, and more on the Jesus Calling website at jesuscalling.com.